Hey, good morning, everyone. Today we're going to make some pendants using these open bezels and some UV resin. So I had a request for a heart-shaped abalone shell necklace, and I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of different pendants this morning just to give you guys an idea of how you would do this. This video is really intended for beginners. You may be a little bit bored if you're not new to the process. Hopefully, if you are intermediary, you'll learn a little something new, but I'm going to be using this tape by J. Diction. I really love it because the bezels come off very easy and don't stick to it. And the UV resin doesn't run behind the back of the bezel. I'm just going to fold this over as I will need to move this around as I'm working. If I can get this to stay put, I'll cut this off here. Your gloves love to stick to this tape, so it's always good to fold it over, and then you don't have to worry about it sticking to your gloves. And apologies for the big hands again. You probably heard me say this on multiple videos, but it is what it is. So the back of this is fairly flat, so I won't have to put the loop where the jump or the bail ring would go over the edge of the tape. I'll be able to set that on there nice and flat. If it didn't go flat, then I would have to set that ring portion over the back of the tape, but we won't worry about that because everything fits perfectly. So I'm just going to press these on here, and I've got this nice oval one I'm going to put some flowers in. So you'll get to see an abalone shell pendant and then some flowers, some dried flowers. I am using the Let's Resin UV resin, and it is the clear hard type. It's not the extra velocity or the higher velocity, viscosity. We wouldn't want it to be a high velocity now, would we? Not the best tool to use to try to stick these down. Usually I use my pliers, but I don't have them handy, so just giving this a little bit of extra push to make sure that it is securely fastened to the tape. Otherwise, the UV resin will leak out, and then not a big deal if it does, but then you'll have to trim it off with an X-Acto knife or another tool to clip it. So no worries there. It looks like it's down pretty good. So let's go ahead and grab our supplies here. So I'm going to be backing the abalone shell heart with a silver diamond dust glitter UV resin. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want the back of the pendant to have this nice shiny glittery finish to it, but also if some of the shells move, excuse me, you won't see a big gap through the back of the bezel. It'll just have this nice little sparkly back to it. So I like to put some type of backing on them. I could do this last and just dome the back of the pendant with this glitter, but sometimes when you do it that way, the glitter will get onto the silver portion of the bezel, and then it looks a little sloppy. So this way you're ensured that it's going to fill the back of the pendant nicely, and you won't have any run over onto the silver. Apologies if my hands are in the way. I'm working with some different techniques to try to be able to show you what I'm doing, but it's a little bit of a challenge sometimes. As you can see, the camera's focusing on my hands and not the bezel. And all I'm doing here is just spreading out the diamond dust glitter to the margins of the bezel. And even if I adjust the camera angle, it's still very difficult to make that so you can see what I'm doing. These are smaller smaller bezels. So there is the Diamond Dust UV resin, and I'm just going to hit this for 3 to 5 minutes with my UV light by Let's Resin. I'm going to do this for about 5 minutes. Again, there's a 2 to 5 minute window on this, so sometimes you need to hit this with the light a little bit longer, up to 5 minutes. Other pieces you're working on will set in about 2 minutes. So I'll be back when this is done curing. Okay, this should be just about done. Off camera, I flipped the tape over and I hit the back side of the bezel to make sure that it was set completely on both the front and the back. Let's give this a little test here. Yep, it is definitely good to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use, as I said, this UV resin by Let's Resin. It's the clear hard type, self-leveling. And I'm going to fill each of these bezels with some of the resin, about 2/3 full to start. This is a very easy resin to work with for beginners. There's not a lot of bubbles that pop up when you're using this type of resin, but if they do, you can easily pop them with a dotting tool, a toothpick. You can hit it with some alcohol, which will pop the bubbles. So I'm just going to go ahead and spread this out and pop the bubbles with my dotting tool as I go along. Again, I'm just pushing this out to the margins of the bezel, trying to not get it on the top part of the bezel. If you do, you just wipe it off. This won't set until you put it under the UV light, so you have a lot of work time. Again, if you're a beginner, you don't need to rush. If you're an intermediate or an expert, you already know this. So I'm going to use some alcohol here. This is actually 99% alcohol. It says 70 on the container, but it's 99% alcohol. I'm also going to use the abalone shells that I got off of Amazon. And I'm just going to go ahead and fill this first heart with the abalone shells. And I am not going to make you watch me do this whole process because it does take a long time to fill this, so I'm going to fast forward here. So I'm just placing the shells throughout the bezel and moving them around. And now I'm going to take some smaller pieces and just fill in some of those gaps. A little challenging to get them out of this cup. And I'll go ahead and I'll just move those around. And I'm really trying to keep the shells below the line of the upper part of the bezel so they don't protrude a lot. But even if they do, it's okay. It's a shell necklace, so there's going to be some, it's not going to be perfectly flat on the top of it, but it will still come out beautiful in the end. And the silver glitter backing makes it really nice to hide any gaps, as I said earlier. Now I'm going to start placing the flowers and the greens into the other two pendants. And I've got this cute little purple pink flower. And I'm just going to keep adding flowers to the bezel. And you have to move these around a little bit and you have to push them down in so that they do sink. Otherwise, sometimes they want to float to the top. And we are going to put some additional resin over the top of these, which is why I didn't fill them any fuller than I did. Again, 1/2 to 2/3 full in each bezel. going to try a little bling. I'm going to put a little rhinestone in there if I can get it in there without it going upside down. And of course it goes upside down. And then it becomes a pain to try to flip it over. Well, we're just gonna have to play with this a little bit to make this one work, but we'll see how it turns out. All right, I'm gonna fast forward through this. I'm just gonna continue to put charms, little rhinestones in this pendant, and then we'll move on to the next. So this one, the circular one, the round one here, I'm gonna add some greens. This came in a nice little beginner's kit from Let's Resin. So I'm going to do the same thing with this third bezel. I'm just going to put different greens and flowers and a few rhinestones. So I'll fast forward through this part too so I don't bore you to death with the process. Okay, now that I've got everything in, I'm just going to move things around and make sure I have them where I want them. Put these cute little white rhinestones in the circular round bezel, and I've got some pink and some white ones in the center one. And I'm just pushing the flowers down and rhinestones down, making sure that they're below the line where the resin sits. And everything looks good. So now I'm going to go ahead and completely fill these the rest of the way to the top of the bezel with the UV resin, just making sure that everything is covered. And this will help some of those flowers that are floating to sink down a little bit as well. And I just want to move this. This is the fun part. When you move one thing, everything shifts. So you kind of have to move things in the way that you want them to be. Oh, I'm having a feeling I'm going to regret the rhinestones, but we'll see. I think they might lose the character in the resin. They may not have that rhinestone effect I'm hoping to get. That little bit of glitz and glitter there. So just doing some final adjustments, popping a few bubbles. I think they look good. And the hardest thing is learning to leave things alone. So I'll go ahead and I'll spritz them with a little bit of alcohol. I don't really want to use a long neck lighter, definitely not a torch, to get bubbles out. And usually you can do it with your dotting tool, so not a big deal at all. You can see a little bit of a bubble there. Just going to adjust that a little bit more. And we should be ready to just about hit these with the light. Okay, these look pretty good, I think. So let's go ahead and get them under the light for 5 minutes and we'll come back. All right. You should be good on this side, so let's go ahead and flip them over and do them on the back side. Now you could put a mirror underneath these and you wouldn't have to flip them over, but I don't have my mirror today either, so we're just going to go ahead and hit the back side of these for a couple minutes as well, just making sure that it's set both on the front and the back. So let's give that a couple minutes and we'll be back. Okay, these should be done. I spared you the having to fast forward and just deleted that clip so you didn't have to watch all that. Let's flip this over and let's see if they are set. That one looks good. This one looks good. Now I'm going to go ahead and dome them, which means I'm going to put another top layer of resin on them so they have that nice rounded appearance on the top. I'm going to make them as nice and smooth as I can across the top. So doming is exactly what it sounds like. You're putting a little dome, giving it a nice rounded finish. Again, if you're a beginner, that may be new to you. If you're not a beginner, you may be bored. Apologies for that. Um, these videos are really designed more for the beginner, but I love having intermediate and advanced users provide feedback. It helps me get better, and certainly the beginners that are watching get better. So now I'm just pushing this out again as close as I can to the edge of the bezel without coming over the top of the bezel. And I will pop any bubbles that tend to occur along the way. And I'm going to do this for each one of these, so I'm going to fast forward so that I don't bore you to death, but I'm going to just make sure that the tops of these are pretty even and out to the margins and there are no bubbles. So we'll go ahead and fast forward through that. Okay, now I'm just going to go over these very quickly with my long neck lighter because I've already sealed them the first time that the flowers aren't exposed to the actual flame. So you can still spritz with alcohol if you like, or you can use a lighter. Again, I would not use a torch on this. And I'm just pushing the resin out to the margins a little bit further. And sometimes there's shrinkage with this, so you have to kind of pay attention to what's going on. You want to make sure you're getting your resin completely out to the margin so you don't have little pits on the edges there. Little tedious, but I'm a perfectionist and they've got to be perfect. So there you go. I'm just going to add a little bit more resin to these. I want them to be a little bit more full. And I'm going to push this around a little bit more here so I can see some areas where the resin isn't completely filling in the bezel to the margins. Now that these are pretty much done, I am going to go ahead and take a long neck lighter and just pop any remaining bubbles. So again, I'm going over these very quickly. And I'm just going to push some of the resin out to the margins. I can see there's a couple spots that I missed. When you put the lighter over it, it really helps you to see what you're doing and what you're missing. Got a little bit of resin on the bezel here, so I'm going to clean that up with the dotting tool here. And just a couple more adjustments. One more time with the lighter, just very quickly. Again, you could spritz with alcohol. You've seen me do both in this video. And we're going to hit this with the light for about 3 to 5 minutes and we'll be back. Okay, this should be just about done. Let's take a look. And we'll tap them a little bit and see if they are set. So this is the top side that we just domed. And it feels nice and firm and hard. So let's go ahead and take them off the tape. This is always the fun part. You never want the tape to stick to the back of the bezel, but sometimes it does, and then you have to go back and take it off. Meaning take the tape off. Little sandpaper, sometimes a little alcohol will wipe it off. But we're lucky, we didn't have to worry about that this time. So let's see if I can adjust the camera here a little bit. Come in a little bit closer, sorry. Don't want to make you dizzy. All right, let's take a close look. Ooh. Yeah, the rhinestones didn't come out the way I wanted them to, which that's okay. Back is done. Looks fine. This actually looks really nice, really pretty. The back's got that nice silver shiny finish. Little spot there on the right, but no big deal. It's the back. And then our round Yeah, the rhinestones aren't bad on that one. And you look at the back, you can see the flat side of the rhinestones. But all in all, I think it came out pretty good. Happy with the result. Hope you learned something today. This is the final picture with the veils and chains. Well, that's a wrap for today. Thank you for joining me. As always, I appreciate you jumping on board and listening. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I always appreciate those thumbs up. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you again next time.